I'm going to talk about macroeconomics. Now, what is macroeconomics? It deals with aggregates, and macro means the whole. We are talking about, say, from the pin to the warships, anything. So, when you're talking about the aggregates, say the aggregate demand, the aggregate supply of commodities, it's in totality. So, for an example given with aggregate demand and aggregate supply. So, once we do this, and when you go through these aggregates, they'll tell you about the performance of the economy. Now, for example, now look at this. How will you measure the performance of the economy? Well, you can use GDP. With GDP, that is the total income of the economy, the GDP. Then you can see what is the unemployment rate, how many people are employed and how many are unemployed. All of that will tell you what is the performance of the economy. So these aggregates point out to the way where the way an economy is performing. Then you talk about the inflation rate. What is inflation? Inflation is, it is, the prices are high, too many, too there, the value of money comes down when there is inflation, or there are fewer goods with getting more expensive. So that is when the demand is more than the supply. Then what happens? People start getting asking you to pay more for it. That is inflation. You're buying the same amount of commodity but at a higher rate. That is inflation. So I just give an example of aggregate demand and aggregate supply. The total demand for all the products in an economy. Say I said from the pin to the warship, and so also aggregate supply. So what is supplied in the economy? Total supply in the economy. So that is. Then we talk about business cycles. Also tells you about the performance of the economy, and we study it under the macroeconomics. So you have the cycle, like when you're going over, it's the recovery, then you have the boom, then there is this depression, there is this trough, that means the lowest point, and then there's a recovery again, and so on. Then we are all open economies. That means we have economic relations with the rest of the world. So we have trade balances. That means we talk about net exports, that is export minus import. We talk about balance of payments, we talk about balance of trade. All of this comes under macroeconomics. It tells you about the performance of the economy. So when there is a surplus, trade surplus means your exports are more than the imports. And if there are trade deficits, that means your exports are less than imports. So what all should be done to bring the economy back? All that is studied here. And then, of course, for economic growth and control, to control the situations such as maybe the inflation, deflation, etc., we have what is known as a fiscal policy, which is the budgetary policy of the government, which it controls with the help of tax and its expenditure. So to bring about more egalitarian distribution of wealth, it taxes the rich much more than what it taxes the middle class or the poor. And then what does it spend on? When does it think that there has to be government expenditure, maybe on infrastructure during times of when there is no activity in the economy or there is depression in the economy? Then the expenditure is upped. And then, for example, monetary policy is the banking policy, followed by the central banks. That is, they take recourse to interest rates, and they talk about money supply. So if they see that there is a lot of, say there is inflation in the economy, what do? They increase the interest rate so that there's less borrowing and all of that. It's very interesting. So this is how we go through it, or we will understand what these are the basic concepts, or what I'll say is the fundamental concept. They provide the building blocks for understanding macroeconomic phenomena and to analyze economic policies and outcomes. So once you grasp these concepts of the economy and its implication, then then it becomes easier to understand. And for that, for the 12th syllabi, we have what is known as, we brought in the Indian economic development too. That means practically where we stand. This is macroeconomics, all theoretical, in which we are going to do the Keynesian economics. And then we are going to see what the Indian economy looks like. In that, we are going to talk about the industries. We'll be talking about the challenges that India faces, and then we will compare it with our neighbors, especially China and Pakistan. And that is it. That you're good to go. Once you know about what you have to study in macroeconomics, it becomes so interesting. So once again, just go through it and write short questions that come to your mind, and maybe you can post them. We can talk about that. Thank you. So these aggregates, or these fundamental concepts, what do they tell you about? The performance of the economy. And when you're doing macroeconomics, you can then, macroeconomics will tell you about the structure. That's how we will see what is the Indian economy structure, what is the behavior of a particular economy. That's all that we do in macroeconomics. So in short, macroeconomic deals with the economy's performance, structure, and behavior. So just make it a point to open your textbooks, read through it, or just glance through it, go through the contents and see what you can understand. Just go through the introduction, or rather, why introduction? Go through the index and see what is given and think about it. And it is, let me tell you, it's one of the most interesting subjects that you have taken. So happy studying.